But welcome to the Kickstarter webinar. We're here to really discuss setting yourself up for success in 2021. So in this webinar, I'm going to show you how you can level up your life in 2021. My aim is by the end of our time together, you're going to learn how to avoid the most common mistakes I see in goal setting with clients, how to set goals that you will succeed at, and how to create a plan for success. So stay with me till the end if you can. I know somebody has a very exciting tennis at 7 o'clock, so they may have to leave a few minutes early. But what I will do tomorrow is I will share with you what I call my core values discovery guides, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Let's try and turn off all distractions. I know it's not easy. It's 6 p.m. here in Ireland. I know we've got a couple of people on from the US where it's 1 p.m. So I know there's lots of distractions for work, but hopefully the more focused we can stay, the more chance we have of making all those goals succeed. So I want to hear from you. Before I start sharing a little bit about who I am, I'd love to hear who you are, where you're calling in from, and maybe what you're hoping to get from today's webinar. While I obviously have an agenda that I'm going to run through, I can go off script. Happy to respond to any questions that you may have. Now, unfortunately, the way Zoom works at the moment is I have to stop sharing my screen each and every time I want to check the chat or check Q&A. So what I'm hoping to do is in between each section, I'll turn off the sharing, or I'll change the size formatting so as I can see the chat, and feel free to ask any questions. So with that, I am going to ask, while I am doing an introduction to myself, it'd be great if you could jump into the chat box and tell me just your name, where you're calling from, and anything you're hoping to get out from today. So obviously there's some people on the call that I know, others that I don't. So a little bit about who I am. I'm Tressa Fitzgibbon. I had a 22-year career in banking prior to moving into the coaching space. And I ended my career in New York as a managing director of a global sales team. During my last probably 4 or 5 years in banking, I also certified as a transformation coach, and I've continued on to get qualifications in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and we'll talk a lot about how we talk to ourselves and the power of language, and also in health coaching. And my passion really is about the mindset that we have, the habits that we have, and the behaviors, and how they can either set us up for success or potentially set us up for failure. So let me escape out of this just to see what we might have in any Q&A or in the chat box. So we have Catherine from the US wants to know how to make goals stick post-February. Totally get that one. We have another Catherine, spelled differently, also in New York State. Improve how I set goals. I think they tend to be vague. We have Lauren in snowy New York. Lauren, I'm a little bit jealous. We just have miserable, dark gray rain here. I know for those in New York, it's probably hard to imagine we might be jealous, but the blue skies that go with the sunshine. But Lauren is looking for some help in setting realistic goals for 2021. Goal is to change direction. Ardaman, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is a director of HR at a community action agency in New Jersey. Wow. Self-learning and learn more steps for success in my personal and professional life. Perfect. So let's go back to, I'm just double checking there's nobody else sharing anything there. Okay, listen, I know that each of you are going to have joined this evening for a totally different reason. I love the joys of, apologies here, once I do that. Okay. You're going to have joined for different reasons and obviously hoping to get different things out of tonight. But generally the emotions that people share with me when they come to do goal setting or want to have conversation at goal setting is a couple of things. So maybe some of these will resonate with you. You might feel stuck in a little bit of a rut. It's like, I'm not quite sure where to go yet. I'm not unhappy, but I'm not as happy as I would like to be. I'm just stuck a little bit. Or to Catherine's point, you're tired of not following through on some of those resolutions. So how do I set them in December, January, and actually follow through into March, April, and on through the year? Or you just haven't achieved your goals yet. And this is where the language starts to come in, right? Just because you haven't achieved your goals, it's a yet scenario. Or maybe you just want to make 2021 the year of success in your life. And you could have a bunch of other reasons why you decided to join today. So before we get started into any of the slides on what I would like to teach tonight, I want you to think about that one big goal you really want to achieve in 2021. So it can be personal, it can be professional, it can be minor to somebody else, but it's a big goal for you. So by big goal, I want you to dream big here. It's no practicality yet. We'll get into the practicalities as we go on, but what is the one thing that you've thought about for years, you've dreamt about, you would love to achieve in 2021? Now, as we go through tonight, I want you to think about that goal each and every time we hit a section. So when I share something with you, think about how does it impact that goal. If anybody's comfortable sharing their goals, please do in the chat. And as we move on to the next pillar, I will look at those. But it's a great way to think about just one. I don't want you to have a list of 16 things here, just one goal that you want to focus on for tonight as we talk through this. So where we're going, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to focus on tonight. So the first thing is some common mistakes that I see people making and how not to make them. We're also going to talk a little bit about how to set goals. Catherine, I believe, the other Catherine in upstate New York, talked about being a little bit vague maybe sometimes with goals. So we'll definitely go into that. Our beliefs. So it's phenomenal how little credit we give to our belief system and how important our belief system actually is to setting us up for success. We're then going to talk about moving into action. And then how do we create some success? So some tips and tricks to help those goals and the new habits and behaviors to stick. And then I'm going to spend 1 or 2 minutes on how you can work with me and then a live Q&A. Now on the Q&A at the end, please know you don't have to wait till the end for any questions. Please stop at any point, drop a comment, a question, anything you want into the chat box. So common mistakes, the what not to do's. So the first, I want to share this quote that I actually only came across recently, but really spoke to me. The real test is not whether you avoid failure, because you won't. It's whether you let it harden or shame you into inaction, or whether you learn from it, whether you choose to persevere, from Barack Obama. And I think all of us can resonate with that, right? There is no point where you're going to succeed at every single task or goal that you set yourself for. But changing that language to, I haven't achieved the goal yet, I've hit a roadblock, I've hit a stumble, is very, very different to turning into that blame game and that shame and that emotion that comes with that, which tends to take us away from wanting to go after that goal. So should goals. Obviously, I've asked you to think about that one goal that I would like you to focus on for tonight. So the first question is it a should goal? And I put that in inverted commas. And the reason I do that is the minute you start to describe a goal you have as I should, I want you to question whether it's really your goal or not. So, my own experience in the past when I've set resolutions and they've not stuck past February, or goals that haven't been successful, is because there's normally the should. I should exercise more. I should be healthier. I should go after that next promotion at work. The problem with should goals is either they tend to be somebody else's goal for you, or it's a societal expectation, but actually you haven't got to the root of whether it is your goal at all. So the minute you hear the word should, I want you to stop and question, do I actually want this? The next is, and that boils into this, is not understanding your why. So when I think about my why for goals, I had a client recently who came to me and said, I want to be healthier. And of course, that is a very vague goal. So we broke that down into what does healthier mean for you? And at one point she said, I want to lose 10 pounds. And I was like, why? I want to be slimmer. Why? Because I think I'll feel better. Why? And the why goes on. And not only is it why, but why is that important to you to achieve that? And actually, we did this for a good 10 minutes. And her realization was the why was actually nothing about losing weight. It was that she'd had an experience recently with somebody in her family who was very unhealthy, who had not taken care of their health, and unfortunately was now in a situation in their early 70s that they had lost their independence. So actually what she came to understand is her why was, I actually want to be healthy so as I can remain independent into my old age. And that's a very different why to, I want to be healthier, I want to lose weight, because I want to be slimmer. And the whys are the things that motivate us to get out of bed in the morning and actually go after the things that we want to. So understand your why, and don't stop at what I would call the presenting why, that first why. You want to dig into it. If you don't understand why you want to achieve a goal, it's going to become harder and harder to maintain the motivation to go after that goal. The language you use. This is key when setting your goals. We often use words like, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I don't want something. We have a part of our brain, there's three main parts to our brain, but one of them is called the reptilian brain. And the responsibility of the reptilian brain is really just to keep you alive. That's it. So it's basically responsible for you breathing, being upright, nothing else. And the problem with the reptilian brain is because its focus is just on keeping you alive, it does not like change. Change changes the status quo and it opens up to potential risk. The other thing that the reptilian brain does when we use words like, I want to lose, as far as the reptilian brain is concerned, why would I want to lose anything? Everything I have right now is keeping me safe. It's keeping me alive. I don't want to lose it. So for example, I'm just using the example of weight just because it's one that everybody can easily sort of translate to their goal in their mind, but this relates to any goal that you might have. You never want to say, I want to lose 10 pounds. What you want is, I want to be whatever that number is. And that immediately changes how your brain processes that information. And we'll go into that in a little bit more. But when you're thinking about that goal we talked about earlier, I want you to see if you wrote it down, are there any words of, I don't want, I'm not allowed, I can't, I won't do this year. You want to immediately switch that to, I want to, I will, I'm happy to, I have to, etc. Waiting for motivation to strike. This is a massive one. We all believe in this myth that motivation is going to strike someday. So if you think about New Year's resolutions, and this is why this session is not about New Year's resolutions and is about goals in general, what do we think is going to be different on the 1st of January versus today, tomorrow, the 29th of December, the 30th, 1st of April, etc.? And we have this notion that come the 1st of January, I'm miraculously going to wake up in a very different frame of mind with this motivation. And we look at other people's behaviors out in the world and we quantify their behavior as motivation. We say, if only I was as motivated as that person, they get up every day and go do X. What we're not realizing here is that motivation is an internal process. So actually, you're not seeing motivation in work in these other people. You're seeing the habits and behaviors that they have, and you're quantifying it as motivation. So actually, the right way to approach this is to create action, because action creates momentum, and it's that momentum that kicks in and keeps the motivation started. So if you ever think of a goal you have achieved, you didn't sit on the couch hoping that tomorrow you'd wake up wanting to go after it. You started taking some action towards it. That action led to more action. That led to a sense of satisfaction, a sense of motivation, a sense of momentum, and it continued on from there. Vision boards. So I know before everybody gets up in arms, vision boards are the thing for the last sort of 10 years, as far as I'm concerned, and especially in the coaching space. And while I am not adverse to a vision boards are one tiny step in the process. So I can sit at my desk. For those on the call who do know me, they know that Cadbury's and chocolate in general is my downfall. It is my one big temptation and vice. Now I can have a vision board that has a lady with 6-pack abs, and I can sit here and I can stare at it from my desk all day. But if I'm sitting here eating Cadbury's while looking at it, clearly the vision board is not sufficient. So not against you creating vision boards, not against the idea of it, but it's the action. What vision boards do is they look at where we are today and where we want to be. They don't in any way talk about the steps we need to take to get there. So if I am looking to change my fitness and I look at a vision board, it doesn't have any of the steps or the behaviors or the habits that I need to have to achieve that. Okay, so if you do have a vision board and you're a fan of them, remember step 1, there's a lot more to follow that. So before we go on, I do want to see, does that resonate with people? Are you looking at some of those goals and saying, actually, I have done that before, or I have used that language, or does it in any way change how you would describe the goal you have or how you would go after that goal? So I can see we have a comment or two here. Okay, we have somebody who, this is from earlier, who wants to grow personally by joining coaching or identifying a mentor. And then we have somebody who's focused on better health. Anybody who wants to comment before I move on in regards to how to, the mistakes, have you seen them in your past? I definitely know that there are things for me, especially things around like the language, where I've always set my goals on what I don't want a lot versus what I do want. So we've had somebody who need to better self-talk. I love that. And that will be coming up in pillar 3 very shortly about our belief systems and how we talk to ourselves. Okay, I'm going to shut the chat for a minute so as we can continue on. Oh, I like changing want to X. I want to be, which is great. It's how to get people on board with yours. Interesting. And we will talk about that a little minute in goal setting. So let me do that. Let me go back to sharing our full screen. So goal setting. So if I know sort of the mistakes that are out there, what I want to not do, this is what I want to start doing. So when I sit down, and I absolutely love the idea of New Year, not because I think necessarily I'm not a big fan of New Year's Eve or going out, it's always mayhem, but I love the idea of it is sort of a clean slate to some extent. And it's a new year. What possibility could I have? And I have a tendency to sit down generally when I live alone or did live alone with, you know, a bunch of chocolate, fleecy pajamas, a good journal or a diary, and just start thinking about what could I do differently next year? What would I like to achieve? What are my priorities? And when you start that process, it's really just a bit of a free-for-all, right? You're putting everything down on paper and all the thoughts and ideas you have. Then you need to get a little bit clearer about it. So how do we do that? The first thing is aim. We need to be specific. There's quite a lot of you on this call who are joining from the corporate or the finance world, so you've probably heard about SMART goals. The idea being pretty similar, right? They need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be attainable, etc. Because these are personal goals, I want them to be a little bit less corporate feel, but you do need to be specific. So I want to achieve X, I want to achieve it in this timeline. That's great, but that's just the goal. We then want to focus on being positive. So by that, that's back to the I want, I need to, I'm going to, no, I don't want, I want to lose, etc. And it doesn't mean your goal has to change. It just means how you describe the goal and how you document the goal has to change. C is for see, hear, and feel. This is where it gets outside of the corporate space, right? You want to start thinking about, okay, if I achieve my goal, maybe it's a career goal I have, I want a new job, I want a promotion. Maybe it's, you know, a health and wellness goal. Maybe it's you want to run a marathon, who knows? But you need to get into the sense of, if I achieve it, what am I going to see? What am I going to hear? What am I going to feel? And by that, I mean, what's going to be different in my life, right? Because the amount of times we set these goals that are really, really important to us, and then we do achieve them, nothing's really changed. And that's generally because it's the wrong goal. But if you can get into the sense of, this is where I'm going to be living, these are the people I'm going to be seeing, this is what I'm going to be hearing, these are the emotions I'm going to be feeling, it's like you're already stepping into being that person already. And that's the stuff when it's a cold winter morning and you get up and you want to get straight back to bed. Getting into that mindset of the seeing and the hearing and the feeling what the emotions are going to be when you achieve it, that's what's going to motivate you to go after that goal that day. Now, this comes to what somebody just said in the chat about it needs to be directly under your control. And this is tough, right? Because unfortunately, we're always to some extent reliant on other people, but we can't have massive goals that involve other people or that they could hinder us unless to that point we get them on board. And that's why, you know, if you're in a relationship or you have children or it's somebody at work, if you understand your why and you can articulate to that person what your why is, then hopefully you can get them bought in on it. If not, you need to look at the portions of the goal that are directly under your control. So saying to me, you know, I want to be promoted is great, but there's only so much of that that's under your control, right? Ultimately, somebody else will make that decision. So what we're going to focus on is, these are the things I have to do to achieve that goal. And I'm going to influence it as much as I can, but then there's a piece of it that's going to be out of my control. And then ecological, it has to fit into your life. So the reason that the majority of goals fail is that they are not ecological in your life today. So say, for example, somebody comes to me and they say, you know, starting January, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour every day for 6 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever your number is. I'm like, that's fabulous. Where are you taking the time from? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm just going to, you know, go for an hour a day. My question becomes, of all the people I work with, you're all very busy individuals who describe to me jam-packed lives, limited sleep, on the run a lot, whether it's as your jobs, whether it's as parents, whether it's as, sitting at your desk for 12 hours, trying to take care of your health and wellness, you name it. But you need to know that you can fit it into your life. So if I already say to you, you only get 6 hours of sleep a night, where are you going to take this hour from? Something has to give. Now, that give could be, I'm going to take an hour from work and I'm choosing to leave work an hour earlier every day. I don't mean somebody who's going from an 8-hour day to a 7-hour day, but most of you probably 9, 10, 11-hour days. I'm going to try and pull that back. Or you have to give up something, right? There's always a trade-off. So what's the trade-off? And can I actually make it? And if not, then maybe that it's not the goal for this year. Maybe your life is not allowing you to achieve that, but that is not a reflection on you. That's just a reflection on your circumstances right now. So if it was, I have really young children, I would rather, and then you're making a choice, by the way, you're saying, I am choosing to prioritize my family time over going to the gym, or I'm choosing to prioritize my career this year over the gym. Next year, things might change, right? And next year could be that opportunity that actually I got that promotion. I can now afford to put a bit more time and energy into my health and wellness. Or my children are a little bit older. They're a little bit more self-sufficient. They're at school now, or they, do after school activities. I'm going to take this time for me. So, simple way to think about your goals. What do I want? When do I want it? And how will you know you have it? What's going to be different in your life to say, I achieved it? What has to happen for you to achieve it? So what are the steps that are involved? So the first thing, we want to visualize our goals. So say, for example, I set a goal, I want to run a marathon. And anybody who knows me on this call knows that that is not a goal of mine, nor will it ever be, but easy to picture. What we have a tendency to do when we look at those goals is we visualize the goal. We visualize running the marathon. We visualize how I'm going to feel at the end of the marathon, and it's amazing. What we often forget is to visualize the journey. So, for example, assuming, for some people, it's a 6-month journey, a 10-month journey, whatever it is, we have to visualize the journey. And the journey involves me getting up for 6, 9, 10 months, whatever my period of time is, to run multiple times a week. That might be that I have to run in the spring and the summer and the winter. It might be that I hit an injury. It might be that my running goes great. But if I don't visualize every aspect of the journey, then I'm setting myself up for failure. And the reason being, I'm picturing this beautiful end result of me crossing the finishing line in a marathon, which is great to visualize and a great motivation. But I'm not being realistic about what the actual challenges I might face along the journey are, right? And they could be multiple. If I start to visualize those and plan for them and do the if-then scenario, which is if X happens, then I am going to behave this way. So if I get an injury, then I am going to do this. If I don't feel like getting up or I get the flu, then I'm going to do this. It's also visualizing, because this won't be a perfect journey, are there other steps, right? We think about just, I need to go run. But actually, there's a lot of other things I could do that might set me up for success. So maybe I need to regularly see a physiotherapist because I'm not used to running all that much. Or maybe a weekly massage might help me stay injury-free. Or maybe I should take up a complementary thing like yoga or Pilates to help me build my strength. Let me visualize those activities and think about what else might be in there. So before we move on to pillar 3, I want to think, did that change for anybody how you set your goal or how you think about your goal? I generally find when I talk to people about this, the ecological piece is the piece that jumps out the most. And we all think we have to do all things for all people. And when you sit down and you truly get to think about the ecology of your goal, sometimes it can be a little bit daunting and a little bit disappointing because it makes you realize, oh, I can't do it all. What are the trade-offs that I'm willing to make? So any questions, any thoughts, please jump into the chat. I have somebody who's shared, I've never used the C approach. Actually imagining myself and the emotions I would feel if I achieved my goal, I can't wait to use this. And that's great. Like there's nothing more exciting than getting into the feeling of what will come with that, right? Because emotions is what drives us every single day, whether we recognize it or not. So if I get up this morning and I feel X, it is 100% going to drive my behavior. If I feel excited about the day, then my energy is going to be higher. My enthusiasm is going to be higher. I'm probably going to tackle those things on my to-do list that maybe I procrastinated on before. If I wake up and I'm like, ugh, I feel a bit grumpy, I feel a bit tired, chances are I'm probably not, for me at least, not going to make as healthy choices maybe when it comes to my food. Maybe I'm going to procrastinate on some things that I really should get done today. I'm going to be a little bit grumpy about others. But that sense of achievement you get with getting those goals, that isn't just also in the moment, bear in mind, that does go through. Now, the one thing I would say as we move on to the mindset to set you up for success, and I'm going to share a bit of a personal example on this. So I lived in London back in 2013. And I was really feeling the pieces that I shared with you at the start of this. I was feeling a little bit stuck in a rut. Like there was nothing wrong with my life, but I felt like a little bit on Groundhog's Day here. You know, I'm all my energy is going into my career. I'm having a little bit left over, which is sort of family, friends, my health and wellness, but I'm on repeat here. And I got this opportunity to move to New York, which was amazing. Got to New York, got about a year later, and took a step back that following year to reassess, as I do every year. And I realized, do you know what? I'm sort of feeling the exact same, right? I've had this major life shift where I've gone from living in New York as a sort of independent contributor role. I've moved to New York. I've got the promotion I've wanted. I'm in the role I want. Why are things not feeling that dramatically different? And what I realized was I was still the same person. Every single thought and idea and the way I talked to myself in my head was the exact same. I just happened to live in a different place. So I, somehow had this belief that the change in location and the change in geography would dramatically change something for me. And that was not the case. And to the point that this person has just made about using the C approach, hadn't really done that. Hadn't really sat and thought about, well, why will I feel different? Why will my emotions be different if I'm behaving the exact same way? And that leads us exactly into, oh, sorry, I have to shut this down before I can hit play, into the mindset that sets you up for success. So, question for everybody. Are any of the beliefs you hold holding you back? And if you answer no to this, you're probably one of the few people on the planet that can confidently say that, because all of us have beliefs that are holding us back. Those beliefs can be anything from, I'm not good at math because a teacher told me that when I was in the 3rd grade, to somebody at school told me I'm not very sporty, so therefore I don't think I can ever have a goal that's related to sport or activity. We don't even realize sometimes that we have these belief systems, but it's phenomenal the impact that they can have on us. I am a runner. I am a very slow runner, and I am not a long distance runner. But I realized about a year ago that I used to go out running, and I would tell myself while I'm on a run, I'm not a runner. I could never tell somebody I'm a runner. And the reason I thought that was that I had a belief that if you couldn't run long distance or you couldn't do a run in a certain time, you didn't qualify to call yourself a runner. And what I realized is I'd consistently been able to run about 5K, but I never really sort of ran anything longer than that, or I never got any quicker at my 5Ks. And it took me, sitting down and actually going, well, how could I? I'm out on this run actually telling myself I'm not a runner. So how on earth is that going to change my mindset, which in turn leads to my success? So the most common beliefs that I see, that I've had myself, that I see in clients, what we call these self-limiting beliefs. So we don't go after a job because we believe we must have something. We self-reject. So we don't put ourselves forward for that promotion. We don't set ourselves a goal of running a marathon. We don't go after our biggest goals because we self-reject ourselves and tell us, I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. I'm not smart enough. I'm not sporty enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not whatever. But I can tell you, if you sit down and take a little bit of time to think about what those beliefs are, those negative beliefs, because we also have positive beliefs, right, that set us up for success. Somebody on the call might be saying, well, I know I'm smart. So they'll go hell for leather after career opportunities. But maybe they're saying, I'm not worthy of a relationship, or I'm not a good person to date. So just because on the outside it looks like somebody has a phenomenal career or personal life or something else, does not mean that they're not suffering from limiting beliefs in a different area of their life. I know a lot of people on the call are women. We are the worst when it comes to self-rejecting in our careers. We decide, I'm not ready. I'm not putting myself forward. I'm not good enough yet. I don't have enough experience yet. I don't have enough of the skill set required for that job. And we don't even put ourselves into the mix to potentially get the job. So we self-reject day after day. And the inner critic. I call the inner critic, you have this little voice on your shoulder, right? And it talks to you all day. We all have somewhere between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day. And 80% of those thoughts are repetitive. So you had them yesterday, you had them the day before, you had them the day before. So can you imagine the damage that those inner critic thoughts are doing to you if you're repeating them day after day after day? So one piece of advice on the inner critic, give it a name. We had somebody on last week, and it's terrible. I've never seen the movie Mean Girls, but she called her inner critic, and one of the ladies from the Mean Girls, was it Barbara Sue or something? Can't remember. But name your inner critic, because all of a sudden you actually have a conversation, and we'll talk now about how you can actually challenge those. But what you do have to remember is your beliefs turn into self-fulfilling prophecies. So if I believe I can't run a marathon, I can't run a marathon. We've heard this 1,000 times, but we don't actually live it, breathe it, change it for ourselves. So what can I do? First thing is to challenge your beliefs. So if you have a thought that says, Tressa, you're not good enough to go after that job, you challenge it. So the first thing is you recognize you have it, and then actually start challenging that belief. So if I've named my inner critic, because that is my inner critic rearing its ugly head, and we'll go with Barbara Sue for tonight. Barbara Sue, tell me why that's true. Because we believe every thought we have is true, and they're not. Just because you have a thought does not believe it's an actual fact. So you have to question it, right? If you were in a work environment and somebody said to you, the situation is X, you wouldn't necessarily just take them at their word. You'd question them and say, oh, what facts do we have to support that? What facts do we have that maybe call that into doubt? It's the exact same with your belief system. So if I tell myself, I'm not ready to apply for that job, I'm not good enough to apply for that job, this is where I stop myself. I'm aware I've just had a limiting belief, or my inner critic has raised its ugly voice. And I say, show me the proof. Give me the evidence. Tell me why I'm not good enough. What about me or my behaviors or my qualifications or my experience is not good enough? And then I also need to be aware of confirmation bias, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. So confirmation bias is that we look for information that reinforces a belief we already have, and we ignore information that tells us about beliefs that we don't have or that we don't believe. So for example, if I'm in my career and I'm doubting myself, maybe imposter syndrome has kicked in. Excuse me, this is what you get when you're talking so fast, and I hope I'm not going too quick for people, but if I'm questioning my ability and I get my end of year review, I get some 360 feedback, and I've had this example where you get pages and pages of great feedback, great comments, and you get 2 or 3 negative comments or constructive comments or critical, whatever terminology you're using to describe them. It's amazing how quickly we ignore the hundreds of positive comments and immediately zoom in on those 2 or 3 comments. And the reason being, it's confirmation bias kicking up. Those ones are supporting the belief I have. Those ones are telling me I was right all along, right? It's great to feel right, but actually you're giving yourself a pat on the back for being right about something that's actually you don't want in your life. So be aware of confirmation bias and draw your attention to, okay, those are valid facts, valid details from somebody else's perspective. Let me look at the other people's perspective. And the other people are all telling me how great I am at my job, how good a partner I am to work with, how knowledgeable I am. Don't ignore that. We get so many positives. And I don't know the nationality of everybody's on this call, but I can tell you as an Irish woman growing up, somebody compliments your outfit. You're like, oh, this old thing, I bought that in pennies. You know, it's not anything special. We're so flippant about those compliments that we get, instead of just saying, why, thank you. Absorb it, be grateful for the comment. It's a nice compliment. It's probably true, or otherwise the person wouldn't have bothered saying it to you, and move on. Don't try and deflect it all the time. And then we want to change the language we use. And I know this sounds like a bit on repeat here, but the language you talk to yourself in your brain every day is so important. So I really want you to start paying attention the minute, well, from now, but as soon as you leave this call, to when is that language coming up of I'm not good enough, I need to do better, I need this. There's critical ways to reassess information and say, yes, I could do that better next time. But that's not beating yourself up. That's saying, oh, I've learned a lesson. I'm going to do something different next week. It's different when you start to get into the blame game, the inner critic, the beating yourself up. That's the stuff that's unhelpful. That's not coming up with a plan of action to change things. That's just, time to beat up on Trasa and tell her why life isn't good enough and why she's not good enough. We want to move away from that. So you want to think about, when do you use the words like I'm not, I can't, I won't, I'm not allowed? Is there a way to shift that into I haven't achieved that yet? I'm really excited about going after this goal. It's going to be a challenge, but that doesn't mean I can't overcome it. Okay? So you don't always have control about what happens to you, but you do have control about the language and the choices you use and you make. So try and stay in that. Changing that language puts you into that positive frame of mind. So you've got a snowstorm today in New York. You don't have any control over that. You don't have any control over how it's happened, but how you describe it to yourself is critical. We're all in COVID situations right now, and I know that varies for everybody on the call, depending where you are and what restrictions you might be living under. But we all know, and it's been proven, right, that if I sit here going, I'm under lockdown, I'm not allowed go out, I'm not allowed go to the gym because they shut the gym, I'm not allowed do this, it's going to change my perception of the situation. It's going to put me in a very negative frame of mind. Whereas if I'm staying home because that is the right thing to do to protect myself and my family and my community, doesn't mean I'm going to love staying home every day, but it definitely means how I describe it and how I feel about the situation is going to be quite different. So before we talk about moving into action, I am going to check our chat. So we have comments from 2 people. So somebody has just said, my beliefs definitely hold me back. I limit opportunities for myself because I don't feel qualified enough to go for them. And I totally understand that one. I think in the world we live in today, it's so easy. Listen, there is always going to be somebody that you consider smarter than you, prettier than you, better at presenting than you, better at this than you. But what we do when we focus on what they can do and what we're not as good at is we don't focus on what we're good at. We don't say, okay, maybe I'm not perfect at X, but I'm really, really good at Y. And shifting that focus, because when, social media, all I can say is I'm just so glad social media was not a big thing when I was a teenager, because I think those people would struggle so much. I would have struggled so much with what they're doing, because we live in a world of comparison. We live in a world where we're constantly looking at other people and saying, oh, if only I could be as smart as them, as fit as them, as whatever as them. But we're seeing one tiny portion of their life. We don't know that the rest of their life isn't in tatters. Not that I wish that on anybody, but I'm just saying we don't know. We see the one piece that looks phenomenally good, and we compare our one piece to that. That person, you could have a fabulous career. They have great health and fitness. Yeah, maybe you want to be closer to them on the health and fitness, but they might give their right arm to be where you are on your career. So coming out of that comparison, because if you're using words like, I don't feel qualified enough, it's because you feel that other people are more qualified. But again, you're self-rejecting. And I'm not saying that if you put your hat into the ring for a particular job, say that you might not get it. And there is disappointment in that. And there is a sense of rejection that you have to process. But if you don't put your hat in the ring at all, then the opportunity is never there. And you're rejecting yourself, and you're already going through the emotion of rejection. It's just self-rejection. And sometimes that feels easier, right? It's nicer to say, no, well, it wasn't that I didn't get the job. It was just that I decided I wasn't going to apply for that job. End result, you don't have the job. Putting your hat into the ring for the job, yeah, you mightn't get it, but you might. So at least the possibility is open. It's not open if you never put your hand up. So we had somebody who says they worked in a D&I role as their last job, and so many women and some men were holding themselves back. My job was to get them to put themselves forward for their next role. And I love that. And it's funny, I was on a call last week, and it was with the lady out of the US, and she was like, challenged everybody on the call to 6 words to describe what you do. Now, the 6 words aren't allowed to say, I'm a banker or I'm a coach. It's what do you do? And actually, to that person's point, it took me a while to figure out, but mine was, I help women achieve success. That's what I do. Now, whether that success is mindset, whether that success is career, whether that's health and wellness. But this person who's made this comment, and unfortunately, all these comments come directly to me. I know you guys can't see them all, but their job was to get women to apply, and sometimes men, to put themselves forward for their next role and the next opportunity. And that's amazing. Like something like that, your motivation for why you're doing that job and the potential rewards for doing that job are just phenomenal. So I'm going to stop there for a second, see if there's any other thoughts or questions before we move into action. No. Okay, let's go back to sharing the screen. So moving into action. So I'm hoping that as we've gone through the first 3 pillars, you know what that one goal is. By the way, this process applies to any you have, but you know what the one goal is. What are we going to do to achieve it? So what we need to do now is think about actual actions. What are the habits and behaviors you need to achieve your goal? And I'm using that example as the marathon, not because I hope most of you don't have that as your goal necessarily, but because it's easy to break it down. If I want that next promotion, I need to get strategic about my career. I need to figure out, what do I need to be doing? Is it networking? Is it improving my performance? Is it, talking to sponsors? Is it getting further education? Who knows? But I need to break it down into what they are. And then I need to actually start planning it. So if mine is, and I know there's 1 or 2 people on this call who know me and they know what a scheduler / planner / nice way of saying control freak I can be, you actually need to start putting those into your calendar. And the reason I say that is, once something is in your calendar and you see it when you start planning your day or your week, you are much more likely to stick to that habit. So for example, I have 2 or 3 habits that I want to make sure, or 2 or 3 chunks of habits I want to make sure. So for me, health and wellness is a passion, and it's something that it's taken me years to make a priority in my life. And I've done trial and error of when works for me, when doesn't work for me, when am I more consistent, when am I not. So I now know mornings are best for me, and it's best for it to be the first thing in the day before anything else happens. So even in my old career in banking, that was it. It went in my schedule. 7 a.m. every morning, or whatever time works for you, it went in my schedule. So not only could I see it every night when I was planning for the next day, but not that other people could see what I was doing, but they saw my time was not available. Because let's be honest, people are going to pull out your time as much as they possibly can. So if it's in the calendar, they're less likely to do it. You're more likely to do it. So start scheduling, get really clear. If I have to do 3 runs a week, maybe on Monday, I'm going to do it in the morning, but Wednesday, given my schedule, I'm going to have to do it at lunch or after work, and put them in there. If it's about your career, say networking, right? Again, not always the best at networking. Put it in your schedule, put it on your to-do list. You should be treating those activities the exact same way everything else is on your to-do list. If you had an email from your manager, you would not question that you need to respond to it. Networking should be the same in there if it's your career. So this is success. How do we go after success? And it's so easy, right? Listen, we've only got an hour together. There is so much I would love to talk to each and every one of you about on what your goal is, how you can go after it. But, I am conscious we have about 15 minutes left. So I'm going to throw as much information as I can. These are tips and tricks. So see how they work for you. What I will say is, when I work with clients, obviously every day, once they define a clear action, not just the goal, but the actions, over 90% of them achieve their goals. And I think there's 2 reasons. I think the clearness in the action is one. I also think accountability is a big one. And we will talk about that a little bit more. So I am a big fan of a term called essentialism. And basically, boiled down, it means you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And I know there's probably disappointment out there, right? We all want all of the goals, but you can't. We're not built that way. There's only 24 hours in the day. When the word priority was actually created, and I've shared this with a couple of people recently, it didn't actually have a plural. It was a singular word, priority. Now, I'd question for any of you, when was the last time you saw at work priority versus priorities? And priorities is fine in the plural, except for when we get to the point that we start saying there's 15, 16, 17 priorities. Then nothing is a priority. So what I would say is get clear about the things you want, and then you're going to have to learn to eliminate the things you don't want. If you have not read it, I highly recommend reading a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. It was life-changing for me when I read it. But we all want to think we can have everything. We can't have everything, right? You've only got so much energy to output in the day. So when you're sitting down now and you're deciding on those goals for 2021, 2 to 3 is probably a good place to be. You can always change because, you know, we had somebody at the very start who said, my goals don't stick past February. Sometimes it's overload. We've got 10 goals we want to achieve and we try to change our lives and it's all too much. So focus on the anything. What is the 2 to 3 priorities? And I use this skill even for planning my week ahead. Yeah, I'm going to have lots of tasks, but what are the 2 to 3 priorities personally? And then I have 2 to 3 priorities professionally that I must achieve this week. And I actually put them either on my computer or on a big colored chart in front of me, because it means that I'm constantly drawn back to them. And when I find that I'm going off in a tangent and I'm adding 6 more little goals or tasks, I'm like, are they aligned to what I really want to achieve? No? Okay, they can wait till next week then. They are not. If I have time come Friday and I've managed to achieve my other priorities, great. But if not, they aren't essential to me right now. Schedule your habits. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but we talked about it. Schedule, schedule, schedule. Put them in there. They become habits. We've talked before about the fact that people often say it takes 21 days to create a habit. Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you that's bullshit. It takes about 66 days, give or take, in and around the 2 months. And that's not that it doesn't get progressively easier, but generally the first 21 days is really just breaking down old habits. The second 21 days is really the creation of the new. And then the next 21 are where it becomes comfortable. Now, if you think about habits set you up for success, right? They could be a tiny little habit, but doing it every single day. And the benefit of habits, by the time it becomes a habit, it uses very little energy, right? Because if you think about how many times have you walked to work and halfway to work, you're like, oh crap, did I lock the back door? Or, well, I say the back door, that's us, those of us who are living in the countryside, maybe the front door. Did I lock the door on before I left? And because it is such an unconscious thought that you did, and it's such a habit, didn't take any thought or energy for you. A lot of people find it with driving. They could be halfway to work before they really are paying attention. So once it becomes a habit, it becomes less and less energy sapping. Unfortunately, instant versus delayed gratification. We live in a world of instant gratification, whether it's Amazon Prime, whether it's, you know, Netflix on demand, you name it. You have to make a choice. And unfortunately, most of our goals involve delayed gratification. So if I want to run that marathon, it's a delayed gratification, right? The real sense of achievement is 6, 10, 12 months down the line. The instant gratification is when I wake up tomorrow morning and I'm like, oh, I need to go for a run. And I go, I don't want to. The instant gratification is, oh, I get to stay in bed, I get to roll over and stay warm, but I am taking away from my future self. I am taking away from that goal. So if I know my whys and I understand what's motivating me to do this, in that moment, that's where you need to question, what would future Tressa want? And future Tressa wants to run that marathon and cross that finish line. Current Tressa wants to stay in bed and stay warm and cozy. You know that there are going to be times that you have to delay gratification. There is always a trade-off. Do I get to stay in bed? Do I get to run the marathon? My choice. Reassess all the time. So if you come to the end of the week, say you've decided there's a new habit that you need to implement to achieve that goal. Week 1, you said you were going to do it 4 times, you did it twice. Reassess. You need to be adaptable. What happened on the 2 days that I did succeed? What happened on the 2 days I didn't succeed? Maybe I stayed up too late tonight and therefore I didn't want to get up tomorrow morning and run. Maybe I have a child at home and I have to be realistic that actually the needs of that child currently 2 days is going to be my new realistic goal. But adapt. You know, for me, I did this earlier in the summer. I'd found I'd got into what I'm going to, inverted commas, call, you know, bad habit. But I'm staying with my parents during COVID. They're retired, their lifestyle involves them going to bed later and getting up a bit later. And I had sort of morphed into that. And it took me taking a step back and reassessing to realize, This isn't setting me up for success because that is not how my body clock works. I need to be up earlier and ahead of the day, but I'm happy to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. So reassess, that worked for me, that didn't work for me. You don't view that week as a failure. You still did something 2 times that you had done 0 before. You just reassess, lessons learned, how do I adapt? You move on. Celebrate small successes. So if I'm training for that marathon, I don't wait till the marathon to celebrate that I completed it. I want to celebrate along the way. Woohoo! I ran my first 5K. Oh, look, that was a faster 5K this week. Oh, look. And the reason being, progress is never linear. I'm going to, maybe early in the days, I make a lot of progress and I do go from 5K to 10K really quickly, but I'm not necessarily going to go from 10K to 15K as quickly. Or maybe this week I run a really fast 5K and next week my body isn't up to it. So you need to remember celebrating the small successes keeps us motivated when we take that step back or step forward or whatever it might be. And we need to be mentally resilient. And this is again about how we talk to ourselves. It's feedback. Things worked, things didn't work. I bounced back. I got an injury. Okay, next week, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to go back to the physio. Doesn't mean I failed. And yes, it's disappointing. I used to be the person who's like, well, if I can't run, then I might as well just stay at home. There's so many other things I could do. Maybe I couldn't run, but maybe I could go to a yoga class. Maybe I can't run, but maybe I could go on an elliptical. Be adaptable, bounce back from things. Ditch the all or nothing approach. This is one of my biggest downfalls in life. Or this, as I call it, the feck it approach. So I'm going to wake up on January the 1st, I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week. No chocolate is going to pass these lips. I'm going to eat kale and spinach and smoothies like there's no tomorrow, and life will be perfect. And that's the all approach. As Catherine had said earlier, by the time I get to February, if I'm lucky enough to survive to February with that approach, I am miserable, I'm depleted, there's no joy in my life, and I just decide to flip to the nothing approach. What I want to do is, and I think I did this the wrong way, no, it's not there. I want to be consistent over perfection. So I don't need to have kale every day for lunchtime. I don't need to have a smoothie for breakfast. I do need to make some healthier choices. But if I make healthier choices from January through to December, the impact of that is phenomenal versus doing this all approach in January. And this comes back to the delayed versus instant gratification. We live in a world where on social media, all you see is join this diet group and you can lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Yes, I'm not saying you can't achieve that, but it's going to be with a process that is not sustainable long-term. If I said to you, no, I'm not going to give you a process that lets you lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks, you're going to lose 10 pounds over 2 months, but you're going to actually have a life and sustain it. So find a middle ground. Don't try to change everything on January the 1st. Focus on those 2 or 3 goals. That's all that matters. Everything else can follow that. Ask for help. Doesn't matter who you are. We all need help. Ask for it. Friends, family, work colleagues, etc. It is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's also a sign of ability to know when you need other people to support you. Accountability. And I'm flying through these because I realize we have about 5 minutes left, but accountability. Either hold yourself accountable, find a buddy. If you're not comfortable that you're going to, we often are so accountable to other people and less so to ourselves. Find somebody who'll hold you accountable. Tell somebody what your goal is. I used to tell my sister, I'm going for a run tomorrow morning, and when I see you afterwards, I want you to ask me, did I? Only because sometimes I knew in the moment I would want to stay in bed. Knowing that she was going to ask me later worked for me. But when I talk to clients about accountability, I also say, tell me how you like to be held accountable. Some people like the real carrot, some people like the stick. You have to know what works for you, because otherwise, if you beat me up about it, I'm going to rebel and give up totally. Be kind to yourself. We are not looking for perfection. We are looking for progress. We are looking for a little bit better than yesterday, a little bit better than the day before, and on and on. Do not beat yourself up. Do not let the inner critic win. Okay, it's time to actually start believing in yourself. I believe in you. I know from the clients I work with, any goal you set yourself, if it's your goal, it's 100% achievable. And this is my catchphrase. I hope I'm not offending anybody who thinks that feck is a swear word. For those of us in Ireland, it is not at all. Even my mother would use it. But you are fecking amazing. Stop beating yourself up. Stop focusing on the negatives in your life. Start focusing on the positives and what you can do. So how are you going to move forward with your goals in 2021? And this is where I want to share with you just a little bit about what I do. So you can either stay where you are, right? Or you can follow a proven roadmap to success. And I do what I call the Kickstarter program, which is a 4-week program with clients to help them kickstart, get into those beliefs, get into those understandings. And what it does is basically it helps you regain clarity and get back on track. It helps you refocus on what is truly important to you in life, helps you re-energize and get more enthusiastic about those goals you want to go after. And it helps you reconnect with you. Right? So many of our goals are about other people. This is about you and you alone. So what does it actually consist of? It's 4 one-to-one sessions, which are 75 minutes each. There's a bonus 5th session, which you get to choose, health and wellness, or mindset, habits, and behaviors. And it's access to a private Facebook group of like-minded women. So generally it's total value of $995. For a short period of time, that price is down to $795. The only caveat on that is that the offer expires at the end of this year. So all you need to do if you are interested in this is book a discovery call. It's a complimentary discovery call. There is no commitment to moving forward with the program. It's an opportunity to talk to me and decide, can I help you? Am I somebody that you would want to work with? And do you think that I'm going to be able to take you where you want to go? Because that's what coaching is, right? It's about where am I today? Where do I want to get to? And how do I get there? So I will send out tomorrow an email that's just a thank you. It also has the recording of this. So for those that had to drop a little bit early for other commitments, they can watch the recording. I'm also going to share with you my core values. Great opportunity for you to take some time and go, what is truly important to me and are all my goals aligned to it? And then obviously it will have a link if you want to book a discovery call between now and the end of the year, but not with start dates until January. So it's one payment of $795. To find out more, you can also go to my website, by the way, which is just tressafitzgibbon.com. Any information is there. So I want to unshare that. I want to go into chat because there's a couple of comments there, but I also want to ask, is there any questions, comments, thoughts, anything else I can share with you? I know we're down to like a minute left. Somebody has commented, oh yeah, so too many ladies dropped off networking lunches as they were too busy. Totally get that. But unfortunately, we think our tasks and our to-do list is more important. And some of you may have joined me last week. I did a career accelerator webinar. If you didn't join and you want it, email me and I'll forward you the recording. But basically we talk about the fact that networking is just important as being that great worker. Performance is one teeny part of the promotions committees. And actually research shows performance is 10% of career success. Your image is 30 and your actual exposure is 60. So keeping that in mind, actually those networking lunches are more important than the email that you need to respond to. We have somebody who said consistency, not perfection. Love it. Totally, right? I have a goal to work out 6 days a week. Doesn't always happen. Some weeks it does, some weeks it doesn't. Some it's 4, some it's 7, some it's 6. But the consistency of working out week after week is what is important because that's what gets me the goals that I have. We've somebody else who said this was just amazing and I'm positive it will help me with my goals with a new perspective and in a new light. Apologies, I have somebody else who's asked about pricing. Yes, the pricing is in USD. However, I do also have that pricing in euros and sterling for anybody who is not based in the US. So again, if you want to get in a call with me, you'll have that link tomorrow. Oh, we have somebody who's anonymously asked a question. How can we sufficiently cover from the damage lockdown has done on our mental health? And that is tough. I think as a world, and I know I'm running over time, so feel free to drop if you have to, but I think we're living in a world that is going to have so much to process in 2021 and in 2022. Whether it is grief, whether it is goals and plans that just haven't been able to go. The first thing I would say is you are allowed to be disappointed no matter how your year went. So if you weren't able to do something, there's thousands of people who weren't able to get married or couldn't christen their child or, and those 2 other people who maybe went through grief as in trauma of losing a family member, etc., may be minor. They're still your trauma. You are still allowed to be upset about them. You are still allowed to be disappointed about them. Sit with those emotions. Do not tell yourself that I'm not allowed to feel this way. And as much as we live in this mindset of, We should always be positive. That's absolute bullshit. You are 100% allowed to have a bad day. You are 100% allowed to have a bad week or a bad month. You're allowed to have negative emotions. When we try and force down the negative emotions, all we're doing is delaying them. They're going to come back to us at some point. So feel those emotions. And yes, I might talk today about the language we use to describe a situation. That doesn't take away from the fact that the actual situation is shitty or really tough or creating trauma in your life. So sit with it, identify what is it I'm disappointed about or grieving about or potentially PTSD about. Why? What can I do about it? Are there things now where I would say the positivity comes in is, are there things I could be doing for myself to help me move forward? So that could be, do I need therapy? Would therapy be helpful for me? Do I need to get out more? Not necessarily obviously socially. I know we're all socially distant, but do I need to get out in fresh air more? Do I need to connect socially with people more online? Figure out what works for you. For me, I am more of an introvert. So sometimes when I'm in that situation, getting into bed with a really good book and a box of chocolates and pajamas and having some me time followed by a great night's sleep, that's what works for me. For somebody else, it's I need to be sociable. I need to be around people, obviously with the caveat of safety, but how can you do that? Is it a group Zoom call? Is it an individual call with somebody that you're really good friends that you can open, but share those emotions? I can guarantee you, you're not the only person going through them right now. Any emotion you're having, somebody in your network will totally empathize with that. And I'm here, really, if somebody wants to talk, I will put my hands up. I am not a therapist. I'm not qualified to deal with trauma in any way, shape or form, but I'm happy to listen and talk to anybody who's going through that. I know exactly what those emotions are like. With that, I will open it up to any last minute questions or comments or thoughts. And if not, I will close it out for tonight. I really appreciate those of you for joining and for staying on for the call. I'll follow up with a note tomorrow. Any way I can help, please definitely let me know. So thank you all for joining me tonight. Go have a great day. And I hope to talk to you all soon.